Hi, and welcome to today's live chapter reading of Forgotten Chance by Virginia Wine, courtesy of Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Briar. Years ago, I fell in love, or at least I thought I did. I'd come to realise that what I loved was the idea of him, the idea of being in love with him, the romance, the promise of a future together. It all seemed so magical. Always giving unconditionally, I opened the door to my heart and let love in. But not him. He never really loved me. He betrayed my affection, broke my trust, and watched as I fell from the highest mountain, my wings broken, hitting the ground, exploding into a million pieces. And the only reason I'm able to say this because now I actually loved someone substantially more. Now the empty feeling being between my heart and diaphragm was filled again. I recovered from a really tough breakup, a betrayal, and trust wouldn't come easy. I was picking up the shards of what was left and rebuilding my soul. When I met Nathan, we became friends. We had the same interests, the same passions, the same sense of humour. We grew close and soon it evolved into something more. Then over time I found I was a different person with him, trusting, open, willing to share my life. And once I knew who I was, who I wanted to be, I found myself again. My life was no longer behind me, but moving forward. He was the one, and once I opened up, nothing would ever be the same. Perhaps that was a lesson of the story, to believe and never give up on love. "What's taking you so long?" Jen asked. "Thanks for your patience, I'm almost ready." I picked up the front so I wouldn't trip, then stepped up onto the platform standing in front of the three-way mirror. "That's a lot of dress," I said, wrinkling my brow. "Wait a minute, is that a hoop I see? Dear Lord Briar, there is nothing sexy about a hoop dress." Details. I was drowning in details. When I look back years from now, what we said when we promised to build a life together mattered more to me than the colour of the bridesmaid's dress. What I really want to do is just show up and get hitched. Jen gasped and then covered her mouth with one hand. "Like hell." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Look at me like I'm crazy." "Then don't act it." I'd rather spend my time focused on the wedding ceremony, feel the emotions together, and in that moment of unity, proclaim promises and wrap myself up in our words. It was the start of our life together, and all the outside noise would fade into the distance. "In the first place, it's a beach wedding, not Gone with the Wind," she said, then threw her hands in the air. I envisioned a strapless gown, flowing with a small train, and maybe a veil or flowers in your hair. When we arrived at the store, we sat on a pink velvet couch, and I immediately texted Nathan. "This feels like I'm waiting to get a pap smear." I watched the other brides as they came and went, marvelling at their choices. They all seemed so excited. Meanwhile, I felt like I was about to projectile vomit into one of the matching handbags. Then it dawned on me. They'd all dreamed of this day since they were 5 and created Barbie and Ken's first of many nuptials. I, on the other hand, popped the head of the Barbie only to find out once you'd decapitated a Mattel toy, it remained off indefinitely. "You're a very bossy maid of honour. Maybe I should have shopped around." "You're stuck with me. Who else would tell you this dress sucks?" So in truth, I totally agreed. The dress was awful. I couldn't get any worse than this pile of gadanza. As someone who prides herself on being fully prepared for the absolute worst-case scenario at all times, I wasn't going to be satisfied anything less than 100% satisfied. "By the way, you are not picking my maid of honour dress." Fine. But I'd veto anything that fell into the neon category. We walked through the store with the consultant glued to our hip, completely unaware of our vision. Clearly, wedding dress shopping wasn't exactly a walk in the park. "Can we see several other styles, more appropriate for a destination wedding on the beach?" Jen asked. "Of course." She offered a half smile but no eye contact, and then disappeared into the back room, only to return with a dozen gowns. "I get final approval," Jen hollered as I stepped back into the dressing room. Stripping down in front of the consultant, aka complete stranger, this time she literally measured every part of my body. The first several dresses ranged from cringeworthy to downright inappropriate. Feeling annoyed and frustrated, I peeked out towards Jen. How many dresses do I have to try on? Until we find the one. Finally, after several failed attempts, I found a contender, and instead of feeling exasperated, I was feeling optimistic. Then stepped out onto the platform once again. Oh my god, it's perfect. By some miracle, I pleased Bridesmaidzilla, finding the perfect gown. It was both casual and glam. You'll be turning a lot of heads. That's unlikely, I said, looking weary. Anyway, there's only one head I'm interested in turning. I'm going to be Nathan's wife. After solving the world's problems in fashion, we chose the bouquet of flowers and emailed the design to the hotel in Hawaii where they would duplicate the spray. Then we walked around the corner to El Margo's Mexican restaurant and ordered margaritas and their famous chicken enchiladas. It was just past lunch when we paid and got up to leave. My eyes crossed the restaurant, but I was stunned into silence. I skidded to a stop, causing Jen to slam into my back. What the hell, Briar? I watched her gaze shift over to the booth where Walker and some skeevy-looking women were pushing the limits of PDA. No wonder he hasn't been answering my calls. I stood in place and eyes locked on Walker and this girl. The spinning came to a screeching halt, and after a few minutes I was feeling that I was in a vegetable state. I waited for the pathetic excuses to begin. But Jen knew what she was doing and walked right up to the scene as if the whole world was just too much effort. This isn't what it looks like, he said in a panicked voice, his eyes clouded with fear. Really? Then what is it exactly? She asked with a look of disbelief. Jen just stood rooted to the spot. His skank was staring at Walker with crazy eyes, all the while he kept saying he was sorry. My heart was in my stomach, and it felt like a ticking time bomb would explode any minute. I'm done, and when I say it's over, I'm saying I'm through with you, she said, and turned with a serious look that broke my heart. She invested a lot of herself in relationships, and it wasn't enough for a man like Walker. We walked for 10 minutes, maybe more, but tears never fell. A storm threatened overhead, and she still hadn't spoken. Not because she was timid, but because she was processing. Before you start blaming yourself, Jen. Why would I blame myself, she said coolly. I mean, shit, he cheated on me. She was surprisingly graceful and not at all screaming and crying. No snot ran for her nose, at least not yet. She made me look like I missed the memo on how to get over being cheated on with any kind of dignity. But dignity was overrated. I knew from experience there was nothing worse than catching your partner in the act. It was the worst pain I'd ever felt. I bet behind closed doors Jen would be going through the exact same stages of grief and getting over her pain just like the rest of us did. And when we'd get home, we'd chug the white wine straight from the bottle. I'd offer to fight Walker if she wanted me to, kick his ass to the curb, if only she'd asked. It's like, I don't even know who my boyfriend is anymore. Maybe I never did. She glanced my way. Or maybe monogamy just wasn't his thing. What? I was waiting for the bloodthirst to set in. Anything could set her off. Expecting the adrenaline to kick in, plotting a devilishly far-fetched revenge scenario. Where was that girl? Walker willfully treated you like a doormat. Carrying around hatred only makes your soul hateful. Oh God, she was in denial. None of this was true. She was pretending to be all zen-like and forgiving. That would last a week if she was lucky. I knew Jen. Inevitably she would start swearing a lot and would retaliate by tire slashing. It's okay to hate him. I mean, fucking hate him forever. Her face dropped. She was in the thick of it. Anger, sadness, and pain were the only lenses she could see through, and clarity wasn't something she would have when facing the ugly monster of betrayal. She'd soon feel the pangs of anger that seep deep below the surface. Falling victim to her cheating lover, she was hiding the sadness that would render her heartbroken in the end. The worst thing about getting cheated on is that the pain doesn't end when the infidelity does, or even the relationship. Once I found out I was betrayed, I kicked the loser out of my life and found myself alone. now left to face a whole new seemingly insurmountable challenge, getting over being cheated on. I don't hate him, I pity him. That's right, I said. Remind yourself how fabulous you really are. And one day you'll get to the point where you realise that your care percentage meter will be so small there will barely be a decimal to describe it. What are those? Words of wisdom? Words of experience. What I did know was healing from being cheated on was different. This wasn't just a breakup pain. It was, but so much deeper. Then finally, when I refused to let being cheated on define me, it stopped changing me for the worse. Especially in a world where bitterness and hatred ran rampant. She just needed to believe it and trust the hurt and betrayal would be replaced with just being hurt again, and everything would be fine. I hadn't slept much the last few days, but that was another matter entirely. I was back at my apartment, packing, surrounded by cardboard boxes and unadorned walls, awaiting a new life with my new roomie and husband-to-be. The sun had set, highlighting the unfiltered light that streamed through the bare windows. The journal sat in view, beckoning me to touch its bindings, hear its voice, even if it brought me sorrow. It was an extension of her deepest emotions, and I couldn't fight the connection. This was a choice. I would have done anything to keep her safe from harm, but I couldn't protect her. I couldn't save her. I could only be there when the cancer took her. I could only watch when she reached the stars in the heaven above, and I believed that one day we would meet again. Happy birthday to Briar. She was 1 yesterday, and we threw her a party. She was so beautiful and happy. Her light hair and green eyes melted everyone's hearts. Her parents came, and my father once again embarrassed me. He brought alcohol and proceeded to drink himself into a stupor. I pulled my mother aside and asked her about her arm and why it was bruised. She had never lied to me in the past, but her shame and embarrassment was clear and her story unbelievable. I tripped on the steps and had a slight fall. This was the first lie of many to come. Guilt took hold. How was I supposed to help when she couldn't face the truth herself? Guilt over the happiness I felt living my own life full of joy. It seemed so unfair to witness her life fall apart. I knew his behaviour had worsened since I moved out. Was it because I wasn't there to witness it anymore? I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. David said that once the pain became too much, she'd reach out to us and we'd be there for her, but we couldn't force the issue. He was right. It filled my heart knowing he wanted to be her hero. He'd grown into such a loving and caring father and husband. He promised our future was bright, and I believed him. I hadn't shared this with anyone, but we want another baby, a brother or sister for Briar, but so far it hasn't happened. I knew it would, they will come when the time is right. We just have to keep trying. Mary. I sat, legs outstretched on the hardwood floor and closed the journal. She never did have that second child. I was feverishly wiping away the tears that started rolling down my cheeks. I dropped my head into my hands. I missed her, missed sharing my life with her. She was a place to simply dwell in those special moments. And even though it brought sadness, these new memories would transform me into a new way of connecting. A typical day began at 8 and ended at 4:30. Most projects required my input as the new director. Even though my new position came with many perks, I decided to retain my old office to be seated near my team, which required communicating with my colleagues throughout the day. I was interested in what they had to say, and likewise they respected my opinions and my new leadership role. Nurturing a cohesive team was half the battle, but I also had to know how to lead without unintentionally knocking someone's input off the table. But this was no ordinary day. The latest gossip just hit, Jake said, peeking into my office. Interested? Okay, spill. Thane, Mr. Kingsley, has received an offer to buy him out. That doesn't make sense. The thought hit me like a ton of bricks. Thane's the kind of owner that loves his company, cares about his job, respects employees, and even gives back to the community. I needed to speak with Thane today. I needed to dig deeper. Any piece of gossip got passed around with widespread inaccuracy. People spread rumours for sport, and it was a common occurrence here.